This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. And unless you've been sleeping under a rock, there's a lot of bad news here and possibly more coming. I hope not, but I don't see how it's going to get better. So anyway, it's a very important show because I think the whole world's involved in this mother of a crash coming we're in. And so it's best to pay attention because even though it may be bad news for many people, it can also be good news if you're well informed. And so that's why we have a special guest today. He's a longtime friend, Bert Dohmen. He's our neighbor in Hawaii. We also have Ken McElroy, who's agreed to stay on. We just did a podcast for Limitless and an expo coming up here in Arizona. And of course, Kim. So we're very excited to talk to you, Bert, and let us have it.
Well, it's always very exciting to be with you and Kim, and nice to be with you. And you're both looking very good and younger than ever.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we're done. Show's over.
and Bert, Kenny's been our friend for like 26, 27 years now. And we've done many investment deals together. Yes, he's made
Oh, great, Kenny. Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Bert.
Yeah.
So Bert, your latest newsletter, the Wellington Letter, which is just an amazing newsletter full of incredible information. Yes, right there. You're talking about what's happening. You're talking about the credit crunch. You're talking about commercial real estate. Tell us what is going on.
Matt, one more thing.
Yeah.
Like Bert's our neighbor in Hawaii. But when Bert Dohmen speaks, people listen to him. But a lot of times people get pissed off at him too because he doesn't hold back. And so he'll tell you the good and the bad. And that's why Kim and I have tremendous respect for him. Been following you for years and years and years. Been to your home and all this in Hawaii. So welcome to the Rich Dad Radio Show, Bert.
Well, thank you very much, Rod. It was a pleasure to be with you. Yeah, it's, I've been not a perma bear or a perma bull. You cannot be perma anything. And everything in the universe, if you study physics, and, my degree was in chemistry and a minor in physics, you see that everything in the universe goes in cycles. It's basically a sine wave, And so straight lines don't last very long. And right now we're in that part of the long-term cycle, the secular cycle, which is the bad part. And in the early 2020, when everybody was making their forecast for the decade, not for the year, and they said, well, if you want a similarity, it's going to be like the 1930s. Look at what happened in the 1930s and look at charts, not just that it was 10-year depression. You have to look at what happened inside of that depression, the big ups and the big downs and so on. The Dow went down about 90% until the 32 bottom, but then it doubled, And so then it went down again, 37 to 1942, was cut in half. And so, these are challenging times, and it's going to be like that. You need the best guidance. And I said that, Robert, on your show the last time, which was, I think, last year, that you want an advisor now who at least has the experience of what's around in the last inflation go around that started in 1978. If somebody wasn't around in the markets at that time, they don't know what's going to happen now. They have no idea. And we negotiated that so well.
Bert, let me explain what Bert's saying, because I use what you're saying. I say if your financial planner is under 45, don't listen to them, because they really have, all they've known is a bull market. Since 2008, all they kept doing was dropping interest rates and printing money. So anybody could have made a fortune. And the reason we have you on right now is because you and I are old enough to have seen the roller coaster ride that we're on today. And so again, Bert's one of the most respected men in the finance industry. This is his newsletter. It's called the Wellington Letter. We read it rigorously. It's well-researched, lots of pictures and charts. He's not just BSing his way through it. So anyway, thank you for being part of the program, Bert. So what does your picture say about the credit crisis?
Well, I think in a way, short term, the banking crisis that we saw in March actually did what the Fed refused to do, money. And here's the great fiction on financial TV. They call raising interest rates tightening money. That is as false as it can be. And I explained that in 1978 when the head of the Federal Reserve, a new guy, he said, we're not going to fight inflation with tight money, meaning basically loan restrictions. We're going to do it by raising interest rates. And we wrote in the Wellington letter, that's a green light for inflation full speed ahead. And then inflation started soaring, and it got up to about 15%. And Wall Street wouldn't believe it. When I said this is bullish for the stock market, it said, no, higher interest rates are bearish. It said, no, not if there's no tight money. So you are still able to get loans at 10%, 15%. I had a friend here in Hawaii that I'm sure you knew, a big developer, greatest guy in the world. And he borrowed money at 22.5% at the top to do new development. And I said, you're taking risk in this environment? He said, well, it's the last good piece of large land to develop. And I want that. He was so right, So that's it. And then Paul Volcker came in 1980, and he said, we're going to tighten money. So not just raise rates, but tighten the availability of money. And that was in March of 1980. And that was it. And I said, that's it. He's going to kill inflation. And of course, it's going to be very painful. But now we want to get out of gold. We want to get out of the commodities, which the commodity market had been on fire. I mean, everyone was speculating in commodities. And I said, no, this is the end of the inflation. We're going to go plunge now. We had been short the U.S. Treasury bonds, which was what killed the SVB. We were short instead of buying them because we said interest rates are going to go up. And at the time, I had a presentation for an investment committee here at basically a big hospital. And I said, U.S. Treasury bonds are going to go down 40 to 50%. And they were loaded up with T-bonds. And they said, that's impossible. It never happened. And then it did happen. They went down 44%. So you have to recognize these. And then when Paul Volcker came and tightened money, a year and a half, we gave opportunity of a lifetime signal to buy bonds. Okay? He said, bonds are going to go back down. You could probably only buying zero coupon T-bonds, which have the coupon clipped off. You're going to probably make 10-fold on your money. Well, I was wrong. Actually, they went up 30-fold. Can you imagine a 30-fold increase in T-bonds, the safest instrument that you can get? And that's what the rise was over the next 30 years.
So today, Bert, you're saying that they raise rates, which increases inflation, but then they're also tightening on the banks aren't loaning much, correct?
See, this time the tightened money came from the banks with this banking credit. Banks are not lending. Okay, right. They're basically new loans are basically zero. Okay, this is the tightest money we have seen. In fact, it's on record. If you go back to the 1930s depression, this is the biggest tightening of credit that we have seen since the Great Depression. No bank is making loans. Okay, either because they don't want to take the risk of new loans, not getting the money back, and second of all, because their deposit outflow. They've had hundreds of billions of dollars of deposits flowing out. It's the biggest outflow of deposits on record, which then look at the ripple effect. Now that causes a decline in the money supply M2. We've now had the strongest decline in money supply M2 since the Great Depression. When you look at these numbers, you say, hey, this is going to be not a soft landing. There is something much, much worse ahead, and you better prepare for it.
Isn't the sign that they don't want to loan, that they're worried about getting paid back? Isn't that a sign that they're very, very concerned about the economy and what's happening?
Yes. One is that even banks who do have the money, they do have enough money at the Federal Reserve called bank reserves, but they don't want to lend it because they don't want to take the risk. of not getting the money back. That's the one. That's a better case. But the other banks say, we can't. We don't have the money. It will all float out with the SVB crisis. And, I mean, can you imagine there? In 6 days, we had three of the biggest banking failures, except for Lehman Brothers, in the history of this country. In 6 days. Nobody really makes a big thing of it. Oh, that was a one-off. SVB, they made a mistake and so on and so on. No, this is the tip of the iceberg. In Europe, Credit Suisse, my God, I know Credit Suisse so well from my younger days when I was just out of college and so on. It's the largest bank in Switzerland, and nobody ever thought that could fail. I think it was in existence 137 years. It failed. Within a few days, boom, suddenly it went from being a functioning bank to being out of existence. These are tips of the iceberg. And as you know, only 1/7 of an iceberg is on top of the water. 6/7 is below the water. And the below the water is going to hurt us all.
And you, I could, I'll jump in one more question and then I'm turning it over to you guys because I could go on forever with Bert. So part of the banking crisis.
Kenny, I'll go to Pancake House, have some pancakes.
So part of the banking process, and this is why, Kenny, you're here, is commercial real estate. What's happening with the commercial real estate loans at the banks, and what's the outcome of that?
Sure. So thanks. So as you guys know, that's the space I'm in, commercial real estate. We've already seen there's a big group out of Texas called Arbor Trust that lost 3,200 units in Houston last week. Blackstone's defaulted on some debt in New York already. And so, we're still active. Actually, we're doing some refinances on some stuff that we have, and we're seeing the banks severely tightening their underwriting. So to Bert's point, whereas before you could get maybe 70%, maybe even 75% loan to value in a really good market, 80, you're at 50 now. They've come way down. Their debt service coverage, or their DSC has come down. Their debt service coverages are up, which basically means they're hedging. And a lot of people have fallen out of the space. So a lot of people aren't even lending, and they're just basically saying no, they're afraid. And to your point, Kim, the bigger issue are the loan maturities. So there's loan maturities coming, specifically office buildings, retail, let's say, those are the ones that are most in trouble, and they're not worth the loan. So, and that, as Bert knows, all those loans are typically sold off to, private individuals in the various forms of pensions and insurance companies and things like that. So, that's actually what's coming. So I tell everybody, I think we're in the first or the second inning of this. This is the very beginning of, a debt crisis on commercial real estate.
And I'm going to add this. I'm not sophisticated as these guys. They're good with numbers and all that. I was at Bank of America right down the street from me in Camelback, and one whole end of the building was empty, Bert. It was a loan department. The loan department used to be just packed with people. It was empty. So this is the big picture, the macro of it. The dollar or most fiat currencies can only exist if people borrow. So by not offering credit and people stop borrowing, that's not putting gas in the car. Take it away, Bert. What do you want to say about that?
I think that's totally correct. And it is downplayed so much on financial TV. Like, the SVB is one time, etc. No, from now until the end of 2025, and Ken knows this, we've got about $1.5 trillion worth of commercial real estate debt coming due by the end of 2025. That's not far away. That means it has to be refinanced. It certainly isn't going to get paid off. It has to be refinanced, or the lender is going to have to extend the terms, which a strong lender can do. They've done it before. Donald Trump, some years ago, did that because he had borrowed so much from banks. He basically owned the banks. See, that's the old wisdom. If you borrow a little, the bank owns you. If you borrow a lot, you own the bank. So Dubai found that out. They were very smart. They borrowed, what was that, 110 billion at that time before that last crisis. And they couldn't let Dubai go under, What do you do? Foreclose on the country? And so they just extended the loans by 10, 15 years. But right now you've got $1.5 trillion. You know what a trillion is? A trillion is 1,000 billions. And a billion is 1,000 millions. I mean, these numbers are so staggering. You have no idea. Most people can't comprehend what a trillion is. And now the White House, they're throwing these numbers around, trillion here, trillion there. It's incredible. But of course, they've got a printing press, and they do have computer money. And that's why we need that digital currency from the government that they're desperately trying to get. So because then it's just a computer entry, they can just type a few numbers on the keyboard and they've got $10 trillion new money,
And Bert, you also said in your newsletter that most of the real estate loans, commercial real estate loans, are not made by the big banks. They're made more by the regional and smaller banks, correct?
80%.
80%.
The number is 80% of the real estate loans are made by small banks.
So what happens to the small banks?
Well, you can imagine what will happen. You're not going to have any more small land banks. They're going to be taken over, or they're going to close.
So that's what they're studying right now, Kim, is Silicon Valley Bank kind of exposed the holdings on the commercial bank side. So I'm sorry, on the commercial real estate loan side. So you're starting to see these studies of, okay, Silicon Valley Bank had this much exposure based on what they had it lent on. A lot of it was commercial debt. And so all the little banks are starting to take a look at that. What exposure do I have on the commercial debt side? And what's my allocation? I've seen some of these, and some of them are quite scary. To Bert's point, I heard it was actually upwards of $2 trillion through 2025. So, whatever the number, if it's 1.5 or 2, it's still a lot.
So that's 2,000 billion.
Yeah. And the real issue is today, those real estate deals are worth less than the debt.
And the debt.
That's the most important thing. So if they matured today, the debt would be taking a loss and the equity's gone. That's the issue.
Let me give a simple example. So let's say you own $1 million on the building, and your building's worth 700,000. Is that what you're saying, Kenny?
Yes. Yeah. Right. So if you brought that asset to market today, let's say the loan was maturing, the asset could be worth 700. And so that means the equity's gone, and they wouldn't be lending you 700, they'd be lending you 500. So which means that it would be what's considered, the developer would have to come in with 200 grand just to keep the property, and they're not going to. So then that would create a debt default.
So we go to break. We're going to have unplugged Bert's letter. This is our Bible here. It's called the Wellington Report. I like it because he's got a lot of pictures in it and charts. And the reason that's important, what Bert operates on are facts. These are the facts. And right now, listen to YouTube, a lot of people are running on opinions. And there's a big difference between facts and opinions. So when we come back, I want to get Bert's forecast, why people need to read the Wellington letter, and what he sees in his crystal ball. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show anywhere, anytime on iTunes and podcast, Android, and all of our programs are archived at Rich Dad Radio, because one of the best ways to learn is via repetition. But more importantly, this is a very important show. If you have friends, family members, or business associates who have no idea what's going on in the markets, this is a very important show for you guys to watch. Our guest today is Bert Dohmen's The Wellington Letter. This is like a research paper. And like I said earlier in the program, it's got pictures and all these graphs, but also it's about the facts. So we could go into the problems forever, and the problems are only going to get worse. But Bert, your offer is everybody gets a free copy so they can keep it and study it?
Yes, because that issue is so important. People should get that. I want everybody to have this. It's free. No gimmicks. You get a free copy. You can just go to the link and get a free copy and keep it and reread it every week. So it sinks in, because we discuss not only what is happening, but the ripple effects, what impact it has on everything.
Okay, so this is really a book. Bert so generally said I would get it, read it, study it, discuss it with your friends. That's how important this issue of the Wellington Report is. So Sarah, how does a person get a free copy?
The link is included in the description of the show, and you go to dohmencapital.com/free WLR. Click the link, go directly to the offer.
That's a great offer. The price is right, free. Get it. This one is a keeper. Read it, study it. You'll get into the brain of one of the greatest minds of all times, Bert Dohmen. Like, he's our neighbor in Hawaii. And I hear Bert's name mentioned many times in Hawaii, a lot of it in vain. How can Bert say that? But the thing I like about Bert, he doesn't hold back, because he speaks from the facts, not his opinions. So with that said, Bert, what else would you have for the neophyte?
Well, I think the most important thing is that instead of saying it's bear market, I'll go away because there's no way to make money, that's wrong. Bear markets have always been very, very profitable for us and for our valued subscribers. Bear markets offer opportunities because you don't have the masses with you.
Yes.
And that's what you want to be. You never want to be in a crowd.
Yeah, so let me explain what Bert says. Your profit is made when you buy, not when you sell.
That's right.
And the time to buy is here. And the other part about this is human nature, is what people do is they wait for the price to get to the top, then they buy, then it crashes, and they say, oh, the stock market is blah, 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 blah. The time to buy is coming up, so get Bert's newsletter.
Well, I would to modify that.
Okay.
That's what on TV they always tell you. Buy now because eventually the Federal Reserve is going to have to lower interest rates and then the stocks will soar. It is totally, totally wrong. When the Fed starts cutting rates is the best time to sell short. That's when you start having the biggest decline of the bear market. Decline when the Federal Reserve cuts rates. People don't know this. We know this because I'm unfortunately old enough to know that. Our business is 46 years old, and we have made big money for our subscribers in every bear market, and that is important. There are great opportunities in selling short. You can buy now, or you can buy the ETFs that sell short for you, which is very good. So you buy it for people who don't get the concept of what short selling is.
Great, Bert. We don't recommend short selling. We're not saying we don't recommend it. I'm saying you better know what you're doing. And so in
everything in life, never follow somebody's advice blindly. Convince yourself that it's correct.
Let me ask you this.
Reagan said it. Trust them, but verify.
Right. What's a short? Let's say you have Apple. How would you sell that short?
Well, you do the selling first, and then do the buying later on at a much lower price. So you reverse the price. You sell short, and then some later date when the price is way down, you take your profits and you buy it back. That's what we do in bear markets.
But you don't just jump in and do that. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
We use advanced technical analysis.
That's what I'm getting
to give us money flow. The money flow is what's happening in the market today. The big money, you see what the smart money is doing, not just stupid money managers, but the smart money.
The point here, what Bert is saying, is very sophisticated technical investing. So that's why his letter is important, but also your education has to come up to match it. Any comments on that, Kenny?
Yeah, Bert's right. I mean, you got to watch the technical and then make the right move.
Can the average guy walking off the street with his diploma from Arizona State, can they go start shorting the market? No.
Only if they do homework. I ask these young guys, because we do hire recent graduates from Graduate School of Business and so on, thinking that they know something. They don't. My standard question is, one of the standard questions, what happens to bond prices when interest rates rise? They don't know. Can you imagine in graduate school of business, they haven't taught them that interest rates rise, bond prices go down. It's mathematical.
Yes,
that's why the newsletter is so important, Bert.
Yeah, but that's also
exactly. We've filled this gap that is out there. You don't get the news on financial TV because they're totally conflict of interest. You don't get it from Wall Street. You don't get it from the schools. So there's not much left. I always say in bear markets, we have very little competition, if any.
Right. So this is the point here. If you go short and the market goes against you, you get wiped out pretty quickly. And I don't want.
Well, if you go long,
Bert, please let me finish. I don't want to get sued by anybody. I don't want to say just short the market. That's crazy. Okay, so that's really I'm getting at. What you're very sophisticated people read your letters, but I want to be sure that you don't jump in and short the market. So before we go on further, Rich Dad is not an investment advice company. We don't take people's money. We don't manage people's money. So when Bert says just short the market, that's not a recommendation. It still takes a tremendous amount of skill, practice, and knowledge. So be clear on that, because I don't want to get sued. Somebody says, well, we shorted the S&P. Well, do you have an experience doing that? Those are the questions. So please be careful. We don't offer investment advice. We don't say people to short, go long, covered calls and all that. Those are very sophisticated techniques. So all Rich Dad is a financial education show. We don't manage money, and we don't give investment strategies. So Ken, any comments on that?
Well, I think you just got to take a look at the trends and then apply the knowledge that you have. That's all.
Plus your skill set.
Yeah. I always like to say, don't be a pioneer.
Yeah. No, I realize that. Because it's the same in every business, in our business too. We don't recommend, like in our trading services, which, go for about $5,000 a year. We give ideas. We call it ideas for you to consider and check out yourself. They're ideas. They're not recommendations. They're suggestions. We always say these are suggestions of things you could look at. You have to be very careful. Robert, you're 100% correct. In today's world, you have to be, because a lot of people, at one time, when we started out 46 years ago, we had optional recommendations in the Wellington letter. And we always said, put no more than 3% of your portfolio in any one option. And then we go to conference, we talk to people, and they had 100% of their money in options. And I was scared. I said, that's it. We got to take all the option stuff out. Because when you go into options and you know nothing about options, you're going to get cleaned out. You're going to lose 100% of your money. And so we took it out. We said no more option recommendations.
So Bert, I have a question, because you mentioned you have ideas and what to look for. So today, given everything that's happening, what are some key indicators that we should be paying attention to?
Well, I think that timing is everything. In fact, that's our motto. Timing is everything. And people should not get the short term mixed up with the long term. That's so important, especially right now. The Federal Reserve officially says they're still fighting inflation. Okay, so it means they want to demonstrate that they're fighting inflation, so they may increase rates another 0.25% and so on. But this is just for show. Okay, when the economy, the actual shrinking process that's going on right now, when it starts showing up in these statistics, then the Federal Reserve is going to say, okay, now we have the cover to stop hiking rates, and then the next step is cutting rates, So that first part is where we are now, the fake out, basically getting every optimistic, the banking crisis is over and all that stuff. That's the short term. And so don't be fooled by the short term. Then that is followed then by the talk that the Fed is going to cut rates. That's another little boost in the market, maybe for a month or two. And then you get the reality. And that should come full swing probably in September of this year, when suddenly the true statistics are released, like the Bureau of Labor Statistics from the government that publishes the employment numbers. In January, for example, they said 517,000, that's a lot of new jobs were created. And I said, that's impossible. In January, you always have a drop because of temporary workers, So we went to the BLS website. They have a website. And we saw it right there. The actual number of job changes was 2.5 million job losses, not 570,000 gains, 2.5 million job losses. And they fudged that out with seasonal adjustments and all this phony baloney. And they think that small businesses, which don't report their jobs, the small businesses added so and so many jobs. They put all these numbers and they grab them out of the hat. And then they ask of the White House, what would you like us to report? It's a political number, the jobs numbers are political. They're not real. Can you imagine? From 500,000 job increase that they reported, you actually had 2.5 million job losses. That's the difference of 3 million jobs. And all the money managers on TV, they say, the job market is super hot. It's very, very strong. They don't spend 10 minutes to go to the BLS website. This is incredible. That's why I said before, my question is always, is this really deliberate? Could it be that these fairy tales are deliberate? Because I cannot imagine that analysts who get paid for analyzing wouldn't go 10 minutes to a website and get the true jobs number.
So I want to thank Bert. Thanks, Kenny. Thanks, Kim. I would strongly suggest getting the Wellington report here. It's free. The website is
DohmenCapital.com/free WLR, and the link is in the description.
Yeah, and remember, Rich Dad does not give financial advice. We're a financial education company. Yeah. And when I talk to people about investing, like with real estate or anything, is when I went to flight school, you want to make sure your instructor could fly. And that's the problem today is most people taking advice from pilots who can't fly. And that's one of the biggest risks you have right now. So I'll say it again, we don't tell people what to do or say somebody else does that. But it's a crucial time. Bert has the facts, and please get this for free letter and study it and discuss with friends. Final words, Kim.
Well, I just want to thank Bert, and the newsletter that you're talking about is the one we've been discussing right now, and there's so much information on it. I read it once. I'm going to read it probably another 5 times and pay attention to what's happening and what's unfolding to see how this all plays out. But I thank you, Bert, because the thing I love most about you is you practice what you preach. You are about the facts, not opinions, and I really thank you for your time.
Yeah, Kim, if I could put one thing out there, people should look at history. At the beginning of 2020, I said this is going to be like the 1930s. And so look at the stock chart of the Dow Jones starting in 1927. I think we have it in this issue that we're giving to people. And it goes to 1954. And it shows you what happened in the market. We are now, you had this crash, 90% down until 1932. Then you had the big rally, it retraced about half of that loss, okay? And in my opinion, if we're looking for similarities, we are now exactly at the top of that bounce back that we had in 1933, okay? And from there, you could see it. It's a straight down drop in the market. It's really incredible how this worked out. So you have the first down leg, which we had 2022. Then you have the rally, which is now topping out. And then you have the real serious drop. So that's why we look at charts all the time.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's nice to meet you, Kent. And Kim, it's so great to see you again.
You too, Bert.
It's been a while. Okay. All the best.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Good news and bad news about money. Special thanks to Bert Dohmen, our neighbor in Hawaii. And as you can tell, he knows a lot. And I thank him for his very generous offer. It's a free copy of this current newsletter. This is April 2023. And it's important that you read it, keep it, and study it. So let's go to a final wrap on it. So Kim, what would you like to say about what you take away from Bert?
Oh, well, I always take so much away. One of the things I like is when I read his newsletter is I get the language, I get the vocabulary, because he talks about a credit crisis. I'm like, what's a credit crisis? And he explains it so simply. So understanding what's happening with the rates going up, with the banks not lending, what's happening with the commercial real estate mortgages that are all that debt is coming due in the next 2-3 years, or 1 or 2 years maybe. It's really eye-opening, and it gives me things to pay attention to. I like to get those indicators and what to pay attention to that might be coming down the road. And it just helps us to all prepare better.
Thank you.
I love it.
So Ken, what are you taking away from Bert's comments or report?
Oh, so for me, first of all, it's very hard to find people that understand and have experience and wisdom these days. I think that everyone's searching for that. Certainly the TV, these reporters aren't those people. So, so when I get a chance to chat with somebody like Bert, who really studies the technical side, doesn't necessarily mean he's always correct, but he is correct a lot. And I just love, to your point, Kim, the language, and I love the study and the fact that he has the wisdom. 40 years he's been doing this. So in 40 years, like any of us, there are trends and there are things that we see reoccurring that start to make sense. And all of a sudden it becomes so obvious to somebody like Bert. It's not so obvious to us. So that's what I really liked when I chatted with him.
And he puts it in writing. That's the best thing about it. So Sarah, what did you pick up from Bert?
I think we actually had this in a couple episodes with Bert, but it's basically learning, choosing your teachers wisely. He's seen a couple cycles, maybe. I'm not sure how old Bert is, but definitely more than I have or people my age.
Right.
But I really want to just say, at the Rich Dad Radio Show, he's a piece of the puzzle, right? We've had all of our experts. So it's not just follow the advice of one person, because he has different experience than everybody else. But I think as you listen to our shows over and over again, you'll start to get the language, as Kim mentioned, and putting the pieces together so you can make your own decisions. We're not here to make that decision for you. He's just a piece of the puzzle. But again, I just want to repeat, they have a great offer for Rich Dad listeners. You can get a copy of the free Wellington letter, which is the edition that we are studying today, if you go to dohmencapital.com/free WLR, and the link is in the description.
Right. And final words are this, is that in financial education, there's two kinds of investors. So Bert's talking about technical. And what technical is measuring the moods, the ups and downs of a market. And Rich Dad, what we follow are the fundamentals: income, expense, asset, liability, statement of cash flow. So both are different subjects. So Bert is highly on the technical side, the ups and downs of a market. I would say Kenny and I are the long-term buy and hold. We're entrepreneurs who put our own deals together. But also it's called the fundamentals. We're watching the fundamentals, right?
That's absolutely right.
So there's technicals and fundamentals. What's his name? Warren Buffett is fundamental. And guys like Bert are technical. They're different types of investors. So thank you for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show, and please subscribe or get the free copy of the Wellington Report, study it, and that's how you increase your financial literacy. You'll understand the words and language of a technical investor. Thank you for watching the Rich Dad Show.
up with